Women are powerful creators. The Align Women podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Amy Evans. I have authentic, intimate conversations with my guests that highlight their paths to success, their struggles and accomplishments, and the things that currently excite, motivate, and inspire them to turn their visions into reality. Welcome to the Align Women podcast. I'm Amy Evans, your host and the founder of Align Women, a leadership and networking organization for professional women. This podcast features female entrepreneurs, leaders, and other professional women who've demonstrated agency and innovation in their personal and professional lives. And with me today is my friend Madeline Pratt. I'm really excited to have her on the podcast as a guest. She is an amazing woman. She's the founder of a creative consultancy called Fearless Foundry that supports impact-driven companies with their branding, marketing, and business development. And then in addition to that, she's also the founder of Women Talk Money, an online network for female and non-binary financial professionals to connect with industry opportunities and connect with each other. She's an outspoken force, and I can very much second that for promoting education and equality in business. And she spends her time creating content and programs to make the working world feel like a place where women are seen, heard, and supported. I am so excited to have you as a guest today, Madeline. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's a thrill to be here.
So I want to jump right into the questions because your story is very interesting and you always have interesting things to say. What is your why? What's the backstory behind why you do what you do?
Yeah, so some people say that, they're brought into the work that they do as a calling, and I would say that my why was kind of like knocking at the door for a while before I started to listen. So I was working in the corporate world. I had risen the ranks as a global business development leader in the technology and finance space. And I loved what I did because it allowed me to think about strategy all day long. And a lot of the companies I worked for were startups, so you get to kind of try on a bunch of different hats. Mm-hmm. But this funny thing kind of kept on happening over and over again, which was that a woman in my circle somehow would be starting a business, and she would come to me, and it would be these random situations. I'm like getting my nails done, or I'm getting a cup of coffee, or I run into an old friend, and each situation would be, I'm trying to start a business. I need to get, these things off the ground, particularly with regards to tech or marketing or branding. And I don't have the confidence, or I don't have the resources. There are these hurdles that were consistently standing in the way of these women starting and scaling companies. And so being the person that I am, I love to solve problems. I would start to just say, hey, let's buy me a cup of coffee. We'll sit down. I'll show you how Squarespace works. Or buy me a cup of coffee. We'll sit down. I'll show you how to get bookings through Instagram. And over time, I started spending all my free time working with women around starting businesses. And, it's that idea that starts being planted and then it slowly takes root in the mind. And all I could think about is, what if I could do this every day? What if I could work with people, who are trying to build a business of their own and be a force for change in that way? And so it took about a year and a half. I mapped the vision and I really thought about, okay, what would it take to make this financially viable? But my why has always come down to the fact that I believe that business is a force for changing the world and making it a more equitable place. And particularly for underrepresented groups like women, we just need to bring more of them into business. And so my why is about removing barriers so that they can do that.
I completely resonate with that. And I am glad that you are putting your talents to good to help other women bring their talents forward. That certainly connects with the second question I had for you. When we were doing our pre-show prep, you said something that really struck me, and we haven't discussed it. So I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on it. You said, I think so much of business needs to be reinvented. Tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I believe that there's kind of an old paradigm and a new paradigm in business. And the old paradigm is, some might call it a masculine paradigm. It's about competition. It's about the big guy beating the little guy. It's about my way or the highway. It's a really aggressive way of doing things, and it's extractive too, in my opinion. And I think that so much of what we have going on in the world today is because of that paradigm.
Mm.
And it's not sustainable. We've got to make changes. And so what I believe really needs to happen is a shift towards a more feminine energy in business, one that's collaborative, one that's got a level of consciousness about the full cycle of the business. Who do we touch? Who do we partner with? What are our values? How do those ripple out and affect people through the products or services that we offer? And so I think that what we're in the midst of is a moment where we're making that paradigm shift. And there's resistance for sure, but there's also folks who are leading the way, and so we have to kind of stand up boldly and say, hey, we believe there's a better way to do this. Why don't you follow us, and we'll lead you in the right direction. And so those are the kind of people that I love to work and partner with, and kind of share that message with the world so that we can rebuild the business world for the better.
I completely agree, and I think that we are seeing that there are other ways of doing things, that the original paradigm was really just the only one that existed. And now with enough women who have enough experience, enough education, enough money, enough of their own power, enough of a voice, enough freedom to be able to say, I don't want to do it that way. It is really interesting to watch that, like you called it, a paradigm shift. And I certainly honor all the women who, 30 years ago had to play in the old paradigm to create some level of success for themselves, and wear the power suits and play like the boys and learn to golf and do all of those things that they had to do to be able to gain some success. But now we have the freedom to be able to say, I don't want to do any of that. I want to create it in my own way. And I think it's really exciting to see that shift and to support that shift, which is something both you and I are doing.
Oh.
So I asked you about the advice that you would give to your 20-year-old self. And you said, stop looking to other people to approve of your ideas. And that really resonated with me. That is a process that I personally am going through right now. And so let's talk about that. What does that look like for you? What was your experience, and what did you realize was a better way to approach that?
So for me, and when I was 20, just for context, I was a single mom, and I was kind of starting in my first corporate role. And I've always been a bit of an ideas girl, if you will. And I'm sure you can identify that with that. It's like, you're somebody who has got all these things that you want to bring to the table, but you don't necessarily feel like you have the skill set or the experience because you're young to bring that forth. And so I, in my early 20s, worked for a number of companies where I would show up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with, all of my big dreams and ideas in a basket, and have them shut down or have them stolen. And that's something that I think happens a lot to young women, particularly in a corporate environment, is having their ideas co-opted and not getting credit. And what I look back and I say, wow, so many of the ideas that I had, I put into practice today in my business, and I could have built my business probably a lot sooner had I had the confidence to do so. Yeah. And so, I think about that younger version of myself, and I just want to go back and be like, hey, don't wait on somebody to give you the permission. And that's when things really started to shift for me. So by my third role in the corporate world, I started working for a company that, because of the time difference, they were in Australia, I was in the US, there was just not the same ability to communicate in real time. And so I started kind of shifting into a mode of just asking for forgiveness rather than permission. And that really changed the dynamic, because I started to see a lot of successes coming from just bringing my ideas to life. But the other thing that I think is so important is that we have a mentality of testing and learning. Because I think the thing is that we'll have an initial idea, and we think that if it doesn't play out to 100% of the vision, that we failed, right? And so that's oftentimes the fear that keeps people from getting started. And so I really take on what I see as like an MVP mentality. Like, what is the way that we can test this idea in the minimum viable way and just this little try it on type size? And then how can we grow it based off of that experiment? And I think that that's an idea that a lot of people can take to kind of bite off in small pieces that feel a little bit more attainable, and we can kind of test and pivot and change based off of the results that we encounter. But taking that MVP approach can be a lot more approachable than taking a big idea and feeling like if we don't see it all the way to fruition, we've failed entirely.
Right. That touches on so many things. The way that women are socialized versus the way that men are socialized. They're much more encouraged to take risks, to try and fail. They're rewarded for the effort, not necessarily the result, where we're taught to be very careful about the choices that we make. And in a business application, like you said, if it doesn't come 100% to fruition, then somehow we interpret that as failure. I also find that I am overly collaborative. I definitely have an internal struggle between the visionary in me and the female desire to get approval and be collaborative and run an idea by 12 people and do 10 surveys and get everybody's input before I feel like it's safe to move forward. And the visionary in me just wants to move forward. And I still find that I struggle a lot between those two things. So I'd go back and say that to my 20-year-old self, but I'd go back and say that to my 48-year-old self too, because it is still a learning process and it's not an easy one. But working with someone in an environment like you create, where you have encouragement and coaching and the affirmation that even if it didn't work the way you wanted it to, there were lessons that were learned that you can take and apply going forward, is hugely valuable. And so that leads to the community that you've created. Let's talk about the Finding Fearless member community. Tell me who that serves and tell me what is available within that community.
Yeah. And before I tell you about that, I just wanted to share one story that was like burning in me. So this idea of rewarding failure. I have a friend, Liz Mason, who I love dearly. And one of the things she does in her company, and I'm like, how could we hack this for you and me to do on the individual level? But she actually gives a failure bonus to some of her team members. Obviously, within boundaries, you're not going to get the failure bonus, 12 months running and still be an employee. But she invented that so that she could hack the mentality around failure. She had a majority female team. And so I think about that of like, how could you and I reward ourselves and reflect in those moments as opposed to just, beating ourselves up for something that didn't come to fruition. So just wanted to share that. But the community is a space that I'm really, really passionate about. And it's one of the cornerstone values of our company, is that part of the ways that we will change this business world is by being in community with other leaders, other entrepreneurs, who share, these ideas and values and allow us to bring them into life in different ways. And what we saw over the past year was that business leaders in particular were really suffering and needing spaces where they could talk about the emotional journeys they had been on, talk about, what was been going on, not just in their professional lives, but in their personal lives, and spaces to really build a different level of skill set. And so what was really interesting last year is we did a lot of free content to call in those kinds of leaders, and saw consistently that anything that touched on the emotional, the physical, the spiritual realm was actually what our leaders were really, really wanting. And so the Finding Fearless community is a space for leaders to show up as they are and to build skills to bring their full selves into business. And so what we're cultivating is an opportunity to call in what we call fearless practitioners. These are leaders in the business world who have a really unique skill set that they're going to deliver in a workshop setting, to help our leaders build and practice those skills in community with each other. And then we also want to support the whole of that leader. So you get access to a meditation membership, you get access to ongoing resources. We've got a Slack channel where that group networks and cross-pollinates with each other. We do quarterly kind of get to know you sessions that we call community collaborations. And the thing that's been really beautiful to witness is how these skills are now translating into those leaders' lives. And so, for example, we did some sessions at the start of the year around restorative practices. Mm-hmm. And, we were all feeling really burned out because we thought, it's 2021 now. Isn't it a new world yet?
Everything's going to be better.
Right? We thought it was all going to be better, and it wasn't. And so a lot of us hit a wall in early January. And now we've had leaders come back and say, even myself, I'm one of them. I'm like, man, that 3-minute breath work, little piece that we were taught, I do that every day now while I'm prepping my lunch. And I'm really excited to watch over time as that group grows and as these leaders lean on each other and, do business with each other, what kind of impact and ripple we can have from that community.
And is that specifically a community for women?
So it's interesting. We marketed it open to everybody. So far to date, it is only a community of women. And I think that speaks to something too, in terms of who really, who needs this content. And so for me, I'm always open to whoever shows up in this space. But right now, it is just a community of women. And I kind of like it that way.
And give me an example of the kind of business leaders that are part of the community.
Yeah. So we've got some folks who are very early in their journey, maybe 1 or up to about 3 years into entrepreneurship, maybe hiring some of their first team members. And then we have more seasoned leaders, women who have been in business for over a decade, but maybe have gone through a moment of change or of evolution in their business because of, this past year. And there's a diversity across industry. A lot of folks in the professional services space, though, predominantly. And the big kind of core focal points for them is, a spirit of collaboration, a desire to do business with each other. That's really important to us, is lifting each other up in that way. And then a desire to also kind of build a bit of a brain trust moment. So rather than me having to go out and research certain things, like a big one that comes up is technology, rather than me having to research 10 tools, being able to go to that group and say, hey, have you tried this tool, or how have you solved for this in your business, and be able to get that feedback. So lots of feedback oriented folks too.
It sounds like an amazing community. And how can people find more information about it if they want to reach out and learn more about the Finding Fearless community?
Well, they can come join us. So if you go to fearlessfoundry.com/befearless is the webpage, and you can read all about the member benefits. And then for me, community is always meant to be an invitation. So if one of your listeners wanted to just try it out for a month, they could use an offer code, just fearless at checkout, and they could just come try it for a month free. I think it's really important that people get a chance to experience it for themselves and see who's in the group and what it's about.
That is very generous. I appreciate you offering that to the listeners. My wrap-up question, which I'm excited to hear the answer because you've accomplished so much already, is what do you still want to accomplish? What's in the future for you?
So my burning dream, my burning vision is to really get into the space where we're solving for financing for women in business. So it's really important for me first to just help be building up the next generation of women business leaders. But I still think there's such a disparity between the ideas that women have and the funding they get to get those business ideas off the ground. And so I think that we're at this moment first, like kind of like you described earlier, we got to have more women with the money in hand to make those investments. But my long-term goal is to get into some sort of investment space. And I don't know if that will fall along the typical venture capital paradigm. I do think that, again, kind of there's a new model that might need to be invented that's maybe more of a microfinance concept, or has more of a collective feel of women getting together and pooling their resources to lift others up. But that's definitely on the future for me, is giving back to women in the form of capital so that they can get their business ideas fully funded and brought to life.
When you said that, I got goosebumps. So count me in when you're ready for your initial angel investors. Let me know, and I will be happy to participate in that, because that is incredible. So you shared the Fearless Foundry website and how people can get in touch with you for the Finding Fearless community. How else can people reach out to you if they want to connect?
So I'm on all the social medias because, we some marketing is so much of what we do. So my primary places to hang out are Twitter, Instagram, and I'm trying out the Clubhouse thing now because it's all the rage. But all of them are the same username. So at Madeline K. Pratt. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn searching for my name. And then, like you said, our website is a great place to go to get started to learn more about our work too.
And I highly, highly recommend that you sign up for Madeline's email newsletter. I pretty much unsubscribe to absolutely everything, and I don't unsubscribe to hers because it is so beautifully written. It is so thoughtful. It is so timely. Sometimes it's a punch in the face, and I absolutely adore that about you. You're an amazing writer and a very thoughtful writer, and I really, really enjoy the content you put out. So I highly recommend getting on that email list because hers is definitely worth taking a few minutes to read when it comes out.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Madeline, for joining me today on the Align Women podcast. It has been an absolute delight to have you as a guest.
Thank you, Amy. It was an honor to be here.
And look for more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to the Align Women podcast. You can find more episodes with more amazing women at alignwomenpodcast.com and visit alignwomen.org to learn more about our leadership and networking organization. This is Amy Evans, and you've been listening to the Align Women podcast.